Hello and welcome to the program. I am Suren. Do we need a religion of any kind to be accepted by any society as a good person? Does devotion mean to become religious? Or have some cultist engagement? What would happen if all religions of the world would vanish from the face of the earth? And what of the future? Does one need religion to understand oneself and discover one's place in the universe and the real world? Believe in oneself versus religious dependency. Does one need to be religious to enable oneself to communicate with the universe, let alone with the so-called spirit world? Many people, on the other hand, seem to think that without a religion or a belief system, we would not have any morals. For example, everyone would kill and steal, and probably there would be an anarchy. We need, so they say, a religion to have good morals, because without religion there would not be any point of having any morals or being kind to others in the first place. But is that really so? Could this be really sound or even true? If you actually need a religion to have a good moral, and if you need being tempted by a perfect and peaceful heaven as a reward, or have a burning hell and brimstone where you will be tortured for all eternity as a punishment, just to make you behave like a good person, then you simply are obviously not a good person in the first place. You are just good only because of the reward you will get if you act good and embrace God, and because of the extreme eternal punishments you would get if you are not, and being sent to hell. The point is, you don't need a religion to have good morals. Right? Those who need religion to have good morals and be kind to others are not good people in the first place. And that is my understanding also. And here, one needs to be not a scientist or an atheist to comprehend this wisdom. One tends to wonder why Christians think that people will all just start raping each other if there is no God. Maybe people do not do those things because they are not insane. They might, however, think that the Holy Spirit guides their hearts. And yet there are still types of people that do truly evil things anyway. It sounds like the Holy Spirit is either lazy or probably non-existent. And, in addition, what has already been said, that most people already pick and choose from their own holy books, same as the Muslims do. After all, we are told that they do not really follow all the bad stuff, and only choose the good things to follow, don't they? If you can be already able to differentiate between the good and bad things, you don't need a holy book. You already have your morals correct. not only is the religion not necessary for morality to exist, those who have no religion and do not believe in reward and punishment in the afterlife and still choose to be a good person, good people, are far better than those who have it the other way round. A good person who is good for goodness sake, being denied heaven because they would want to have evidence, or a murdering pedophile who asks forgiveness on their deathbed. Just imagine. Really, how can you accept that? That's a good question. There once was a time when people and friends tried to convince one another that a God existed, but was dead. One should believe in him. A certain man's brother was involved in an accident, and a co-worker said that there must be a God. Otherwise, how could he have survived that? And the author wrote, "It was a pretty horrific accident, but I said to the guy, why did not God stop the accident from happening?" Now, the work has become awkward with this guy. Why do they do this? Question mark. Consider the other instance. A lady tried to tell me that there is most certainly a God, and she is praying for me because I am apparently very confused. Just imagine. We really needed to do something about this, she said. And I think the religious folk actually would think the other one is being persecuted. It is actually more than the so-called morals we observe. Religious people wish for an eternal life in their heaven without much worry about their current lives. This is being said without any discrimination against them. They are indeed too weak to accept that human life has no particular meaning in the universe at a cosmic scale in any frame of thinking or time. Sorry for offending some of you that we think this way anyway. Our being good or not can have no influence in the universal scale. That is what it is. It certainly is fun to imagine that you are important enough to have an all-powerful being looking out for you and your loved ones. Beautiful. But does that really happen like that? And isn't that without the God? And so what's to stop you raping and murdering as much as you like now? Another good question. There are many religions of today where raping and murdering are considered as their holy duty against the unbelievers or infidels. How much raping and murdering would you do if God was not watching you? Good question. That, of course, is an opinion. One other said, I'll be in that way inclined. Like one monkey looked at the sun and told the other monkey, is it not for you to give me your share? So, goddamn frail. They would rather put a coin in the wishing well than buy dinner for someone. If the only thing keeping a person decent is the expectation of the divine reward, then that person is a piece of, well, you think of the rest. What about life itself? You got to tell yourself stories that violate every law of the universe just to get through to the goddamn day, correct? What's that to say about your reality? Look at the crime rate in the most heavily religious countries. Look at how many religious people occupy prisons. I had several discussions like this about our moral issues. It is really fascinating, being in full agreement with the author of this note. So many Christians were saying atheists cannot be good people because they don't have a set of objective laws or standards to follow created by the great entity, I say, like the thousands of other religions out there. Just to mention, would you say their morals are subjective? No? Well, they are not. They are more subjective than secular morals because you can only interpret your books in hundreds of ways, almost like an elastic band. Think about it. There are also many Christians considering sex in the same light. Atheists drive their morals from the fact that we want to exist in a society that treats people well. So what's wrong with that? The reason an atheist would be a good person is far more intrinsic than a religious person. That is the truth. Religion does not make people good. It only sanctions their citizens into bigotry, without bias or judgment. The vast majority of the worst people we have ever met have been religious. I had my share with similar folk going house to house and supposedly sharing their righteousness. Specifically, most evangelical questions also can be directed to the people following the 7th century religions. Anybody who claims that without religion we would not have any morals is only publicizing their own criticism and their own morals to the world. Is religion or belief in God necessary for being a good person, considering that all religions promote values of humanity, love, and compassion towards others? Consider. My mother says, I don't think about the Christian diet very much. I don't enjoy the concept of one person dying for whatever reason, or some sins that I might have committed or will probably commit in the future. Who is in need to be accountable for what I have done? But me, and me alone. I cannot say what will happen to me when I die. Nobody living can say for a fact that with science of what the afterlife is, it is or may even be a bunch of theories, and that's it. I have not gone out to purposely to hood other human beings. I do not take dangerous drugs. I do not tell lies without claiming to be an actual good person to do so. I treat everyone around me the way I want to be treated. So, I would answer with a no. There is no need for God, necessarily, for being a good human person. I do not personally use religion to force myself to be presented as a good person. But if someone needs religion to tell them how to think, do what you have got to do. In Psychology Today, the magazine, there was a question asked, does religion help you? Research on how beliefs shape well-being can enrich religious practice. Religion is good at cultivating beliefs. For thousands of years, religions have used music, rituals, auditory means, or oratorios, and missionaries spreading their religious beliefs, and they impacted well-being. Only certain beliefs reliably and strongly impact people's well-being, including almost non-foundational ones in religious traditions. Beliefs about things like reincarnation, and even whether it exists, usually doesn't register well-being studies. That is what has been discovered so far. This author further elaborates, saying, cognitive behavioral therapy may work by focusing on basic beliefs about the self, but to research, that is a small research, concerns the primal world beliefs, in short, about the world and its atypical characteristics. Seeing the world as safe and enticing place presents two main reasons. One has to see the world as a good place generally, as opposed to a bad place where, in the extreme, the world is a giant dumpster fire, the author writes. Says an official doctor in his site, there are still huge unofficial divisions within religions, including Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, wherein the people of the same faith think that it supports opposite primal. He says, I recently turned on my car radio, and an evangelist preacher told me, God has given me the world for my enjoyment and orchestrates everything for my safety and growth. The world is good, but there is also a fire and brimstone Christianity that says the world is really bad and humans are brainless. In Jonathan Edwards' famous 1741 writings, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, he describes a God who supports you, who holds you precariously every day over the fires of hell, as if holding a spider or some other insect, and looking upon you as if you are being worthy of nothing else but to be cast into the everlasting fire. Think about it. If you think your religion might require negative primals, you can just be sure. I just want you to know that this takes, if you must see the world as a bad place, as part of your faith, your well-being may suffer throughout your life. That's a fact. This trade-off might be acceptable to some, since religion is often about more than just well-being, but then you should know well-being is likely not the only trade-off. There are behaviors you might be careful about. A recent study by Swiss colleagues found strong connections between good world beliefs and character strengths, such as joy. Love and hope treats the Bible causing the fruits of the Spirit. Your religion may well be among society's best positions in institutions to increase well-being at a certain scale. Religions have amazing practical tools, stretching over millennia, to cultivate beliefs. Religion is free to oppose strongly positive beliefs in a way science is what about? Likely, the biggest weakness of science feasts on interventions like cognitive behavioral therapy presents, the incessant moderation. And instead of encouraging positive beliefs, our business is to make negative beliefs less negative, neutral at best, which limits their impact. Religion is freely out there to paint the world so wonderfully that the chance to live there is a blessing. Keep it in mind. First step in exploring how your attention or religion interacts or intersects with primal and other well-being related beliefs is to jumpstart a conversation, right? One idea is to send this post to your local religious leaders and ask for a homily and a simple question. As people of faith, are we free to see the world as a place with safe and beautiful things predominating more than dangerous and ugly things? That's a good question to ask. I'll say thank you, Joy Clifton, PhD, studying psychology of extreme basic world beliefs, for your insight, which are well documented and well spoken about. Thank you. Is religion necessary to be a good person? I ask again. As it is written by J. Mohanlal, religion has too often become something people wear like a badge, a title, or a mask. But before you call yourself a Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, Jew, or any other name, ask yourself, am I a good human first? Because religion without humanity is empty. Prayers without compassion are meaningless. Scriptures without kindness are just words. The truth is simple, he says. The world does not need more people preaching about religion. The world needs more people living in kindness. So let your life itself be your prayer. Let your compassion itself be your temple. Let your kindness itself be your philosophy. Because in the end, no religion is required to be a good person. Only a good heart is. Do people need religion? I ask again. Religion can be a difficult subject because of how it is tied to deeply held beliefs. Most people who analyze the religious idea are either making it into a case, one way or another, or are providing some sort of critique. One wants to explain the role of religion and what aspects of it are necessary for human existence, as well as have a sense of meaning, purpose, and happiness. Let us then define religion as a belief system that people assume to understand their own reality, their sense of self, how they fit, what they should do with their lives. Let us now look at the two components, explaining the universe and individual's role within it. To start with, how does the universe work? All living organisms needing to understand the world around them to optimize their decision-making and action-taking for the purposes of successful growth. Comprehending how gravity works, for example, allows a person to optimally throw a spear to kill an animal to eat for food that evening. Believing a lion might be hiding behind a bush is a good belief, if it keeps a person from dying. These beliefs about reality will make or break you, so it is important to get as much information as possible about how everything works so that you can master your own life. But there are a lot more things that humans do not comprehend, and historically, many things that they did not understand in the past. There are also a few interesting questions, like where do we come from? And where do we go when we die? As well as the classic questions that science subsequently answers, like where the rain comes from and what stars are in the sky. Atheists called the God of the gaps to point out how the need for God as an explanation for how the world works, but it decreases more and more about and the reality that can be explained by science. Whereas theorists did reply back that if God created the universe, then instead of explaining how it works, doesn't change how amazing his creation is. Regardless of what is true, there is no doubt that belief systems, including religion and science, are formed to explain the world. None of these explanations include social norms, which are not unchangeable realities like physics, but our reality in the same sense is that most people act as if they are true. Record component of this is ethics, which are rules for acceptable behaviors in relation to other people. Rules such as don't hurt people or steal from them are fundamental ethics to follow to keep social order and ensure cooperation within society. Science cannot necessarily and perfectly explain optimal ethics, and there are very complex situations like taxes, taking money from people by governments, their force for a state, so to settle wars. Is it ever okay to initiate force? Good question. And that people will have rules such as thou shalt not kill and they shalt not steal, offer an ethical framework to follow. So, comprehension of how the world works and how to operate optimally within it has strong components of religion. How does an individual fit within the world? It is as broad as his or her purpose in life, and what Nero was supposedly chose to be doing every day. The religion, therefore, can provide community, connections, a sense of belonging, an essential purpose, and a clear recommended list of things to do, but not necessarily to live a good life. This can be beneficial to people who are lost, confused, or searching for answers, though it does have its risks in cases of killing others over differing beliefs. Take, for instance, Islam against all other religions. However, many religions recommend service to others. Love and family are core values, all of which lead to someone feeling better about the world and their role in it. We can certainly talk about whether it is necessary to have beliefs. Religion technically is not absolutely necessary, as shown from the learned atheist in the world who lives their life similar to those of believers. However, The components that we defined earlier are necessary for someone to feel like they understand the world and their role in it. Everyone needs a belief system, so it seems. Everyone has an ethical code. Everyone has a sense of self, meaning, and fit within the world, even if it is a sense that they do not have it. And so, what do people really need? They need an understanding of the world around them and how they fit into it. Do they exactly need a religion? Not necessarily, but they need something that fulfills those needs. How you feel them is up to you, but note that you do in fact need them to feel like you understand what you are to do in this life. The need for positive outlook on the future is what you primarily need. It cannot just be, that way understood, the world and their role in it, but that the world and their role can and hopefully will get better over time. The growth is the desire to have an outcome of all life on earth, and the growth is transferring and transitioning from a current state to a better future state, to believe that positive future outcomes are possible and is necessary for someone to feel good about their lives. Religion provides a promise of a better future and an eternally positive afterlife, while the political movements provide the promise of a saved world. If you only do the things like the move to renewable energy, for instance, refraining from consuming animal products, or give way to higher paying jobs to a certain demographics. In either example, the belief in the potential for a positive future outcome is necessary for one's worldview. If the future is not looking optimistic, then they should just make the most of their time now through as much pleasurable as possible. It still is optimizing for the most benefit. It's just that the only benefit to be had is now, since the future is in league with that worldview. If there is an all-powerful being that can make things better at any time, then your faith should never waver. Alternatively, it can disappear at a moment's notice. If it is based on whether your political party gets elected or you don't make any mistakes in your life. Just think about it. We can really tell that we need three things in life: an understanding of the world, an understanding of how you fit in there, and a belief that your future will be better than your present. If you find those three things in religion, that would be a code for jubilation. If you find it elsewhere, then I still will applaud you for having those three things. Because those three things are essential for your sense of meaning in life, as Nathaniel Garrett Novosel puts it. Can one be morally sound without religion? That's a good question too. It is always possible to have morals without religion. Remembering morality is frequently rooted in empathy, human reasoning, social contact, and the desire for social cohesion, rather than solely relying on divine commands. Research shows that both religious and non-religious individuals demonstrate similar moral behaviors and responses to ethical dilemmas. Consider, what are the key perspectives of morality without religion? Empathy and social evolution. Morality often stems from a natural and evolved capacity for empathy, allowing all other humans to form cooperative societies. What of the secular ethics? Ethical frameworks can be constructed around minimizing suffering and promoting the well-being of others. What about social contract? Rules against harming others are essential for societal, not just spiritual order. Global consensus. A majority of people in many countries, including high percentages of agnostics and atheists, agree that one can be moral without believing in a God. Arguments on the source of morality. Against dependency. Morality does not require a religious foundation, as many people act morally based on compassion and education. With dependency. Some argue that wild ones can be moral also without religion. And I truly can object that. Universal moral standards, and those can only exist if rooted in a divine, let alone a physical source. However, let us not forget that while religion can influence morality, it is not the sole source of human ethics. According to Wikipedia, if you're familiar with, one reads the following. Religion and morality are not synonymous. The religion may depend on morality and even develops alongside morality, but morality does not necessarily depend upon religion, despite some do make an utmost or almost automatic assumption to this effect. According to the Westminster Dictionary of Christian Ethics, religion and morality ought to be defined differently and have no definite or definitional connections with each other. Conceptually and in principle, morality and a religious value systems are two distinct kinds of value systems or action guides. It reviews some morality and religion that can overlap. One definition is that morality is an active process which is, at the very least, the effort to guide one's conduct by reason, that is, doing where there are the best reasons for doing, while giving equal consideration to the interests of all those affected by what one does. We further discover within the whole range of ethical traditions, religious traditions coexist with secular value frameworks such as humanism, utilitarianism, and others. There are many types of religious values. Modern monotheistic religions such as Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and to a certain degree others such as Sikhism defined right and wrong by the laws and rules set forth by their respective gods and as interpreted by religious leaders within the respective faith. Polytheistic religious traditions tend to be less absolute. For example, within Buddhism, the intention of the individual and circumstances play certain roles in determining whether an action is right or wrong. Barbara Stoller-Miller points out a further disparity between the morals of religious traditions, stating that in Hinduism, practically right and wrong are decided according to the categories of social rank, kinship, and stages of life. For modern Westerners, we have been raised on ideals of universality and egalitarianism. These relativity of values and obligations are descriptive of one aspect of Hinduism and which may be most difficult to understand, at least by some. The Westminster Dictionary of Christian Ethics says, "For many religious people, morality and religion are the same or inseparable. For them, the morality is part of religion, or their religion is their morality. For others, especially for non-religious people, morality and religion are distinct and separable. Religion may be moral or non-moral, and morality may or should be non-religious." Even for some religious people, the two are different and separable. They may hold that religion should be an aspect of morality, but they also agree that they may not be. There are no problems noted that could arise if religiosity defined ethics as one. Religious practices like torturing unbelievers or burning them alive are potentially being labeled as ethical too. Believe it or not. The lack of a common religious baseline across humanity, because religions provide different theological definitions for the idea of sin. It is also further noted that various documents, such as the UN Declaration of Human Rights, lay out transcultural and transreligious ethical concepts and principles, such as slavery, genocide, torture, sexism, racism, murder, assault, fraud, deceit, and intimidation, which requires no reliance on religion or social convention for us to understand they are ethically wrong. We also discover the study of religion and morality is contentious due to conceptual differences. The ethnocentric views and morality. Failure to distinguish between in-group or out-group altruism and inconsistent definition of religious reality all contribute to conflicting findings. Membership to religious groups can accentuate biases in behavior towards in-group versus out-group members, which may explain the lower number of interracial friends and greater approval of torture. Pro-socialism, which may be related to the desire to further one's religious script. The egotistically motivated pro-sociality. They also affect the reports resulting in biases. Curating can be biased by stereotypes and indications over personal group affiliations as sufficient to bias reporting. In addition to this, modern research in criminology also acknowledges an inverse relationship between religion and crime, with some studies establishing this connection. An analysis of 60 studies on religion and crime concluded that religious behaviors and beliefs exerting a moderate deterrent effect on individuals' criminal behaviors. Think about it. However, in their books about the materialism in America's evangelical churches, for instance, accuse fellow Christians of failing to do better than their counterparts in the percentage per year, two widely held moral standards, as, for example, lying, theft, and sexual infidelity. We further discover that morality does not need to be based upon religious authority. It should be based on the well-being of others, cultural values, and human reasoning. The majority of secular traditions involving morality emphasize and iterate different virtues, including compassion, honesty, and justice. The moral systems, regardless of being religious or non-religious, agree on these very core foundational values. Non-religious commentators have supported the ability of secular value frameworks to provide useful guides. Bernard Williams argued that either one's motives for following the moral word of God or moral motives, they are not being followed. If they are, then one is already equipped with moral motivations and introduction of God as nothing extra. But if there are no moral motives, then there will be motives of such a kind that they cannot appropriately motivate morality at all. We reach the edge. We reach the conclusion that any appeal to God in this connection either edge to nothing at all, or it edges the wrong sort of thing. Other observers criticize their religious morals as incompatible with modern social norms. For example, Richard Dawkins, writing in The God Delusion, stated that religious people have committed a wide variety of acts and held certain beliefs through the history that we now consider morally repugnant. He stated that Adolf Hitler and Nazis held broadly Christian religious beliefs that inspired the Holocaust on account of anti-Semitic Christian doctrine, that Christians have traditionally imposed unfair restrictions on the legal and civil rights of women, and the Christians have condoned slavery of some form or description throughout most of Christianity's history. Can a person feel connected to the universe without believing in God or being religious? Think about it. I say absolutely. We can all feel connected to the universe without believing in a God or being religious, because we are all part of the universe. Can one be close to God without religion? Is it possible to do so through prayer and probably meditation? Are set of rules and values that depicted in a holy book truly the only way? Spirituality is something greater in the world or even beyond the world. It is to believe that not everything can be explained through science or logic. And there is a reason for everything beyond logical explanation. It doesn't always include God, but it can be. You can be spiritual, but not necessarily religious, which means that you cannot believe in a God or a divine identity and can have a relationship with him and her or it, but you cannot fully believe in the works of religious scriptures. You cannot believe in a God that you don't necessarily worship. You simply acknowledge the possible existence of one. The God that you believe in should simply be the sum of inexplicable forces of the universe, not necessarily all-knowing creator that will put you through eternal hell if you don't abide by his rules. It is more comforting to believe this, less scary and more liberating. When it comes to spirituality, the cards are in your hands. Whatever you want to believe or disbelieve, it's up to you. You can have any type of relationship that you want with God, even if you don't believe in all religious teachers. If you do believe in some religious techniques or teachings, that is okay also. Read the Bible if you must and if you want, and use it as a work of guidance, but not as rules. You can indeed use it to learn about and show love. You can even talk to that God about what is bothering you, what you want to happen in your life, and what your goals are for getting there. If you believe that God can help, well, ask him or her or it. It's all up to you. Your relationship with God is extremely personal, and you should not let what others do or believe determine your own. Let me rephrase. If religion did not exist, what would happen to the world? Question mark. This question has been put forward, and some people answered that they have imagined and wondered what would happen to the world and people if it didn't exist. And I thought that religion was probably the most important part of the civilization, and without it, the world would not have been civilized, says the author. Or one of the authors, anyway. What do you think? One other said that the religion was a way to get all the farmers to bring their spoils for tributes to the ruler who was there on God's behalf to keep them safe from invaders, usually hunters and hoarders, who got salty at the idea of farmers blocking what they perceived as being opened for grazing and hunting grounds. Religion had only been here to control less critically thinking population and to care for those that viewed themselves as elite. In those days, a good civilization had to have full-grain warehouses and a strong army, while a bad civilization had normally empty grain warehouses and a weak army. Think about it. Yet somebody else said, what would happen to the world of today if believers abandoned belief in their religion? If religious people stopped believing altogether, we would still have lots of cultural influence from religion, believe it or not. And many people would still have moral framework based on their religion. I don't think we can expect much difference at all. Apparently God, or our holy book says, listen to it, he said, we have often secular discussions, perhaps in a very gullible and often beautifully ignorant people are in large groups believe new systems would develop. If religions were never invented, particularly in prehistory, and religion was essentially a blanket system covering the broad topics of science, creation, philosophy, mental and physical health management, music, art, government, laws, punishment, and more. It probably could be explained why we at all existed, where we came from, what was expected of us, who was in charge, whose commands could not be questioned, what was acceptable, and what moral codes or choices to make, what songs and sounds were acceptable, what topics needed to be represented, and many more. One would like to think that simply we would have a different name for something very similar to have the comfort of not having difficult and unanswered questions. We would need something to rely on and show if the religion was not invented. We would still have to grow up if there was no religion left. Perhaps an important step of that one's mind is to accept that death was an actual ending, and that was also okay, and that there may be no grand reason that people have at all existed. Yet, one other says that religion does not make people civilized. Many religious people are moronic, hateful abusers, and criminals, whereas many atheists are the paragons of virtue and goodness. Just think about it. What society needs is now the examples of moral standards, figures we can look up to, and guards against extremism and hate propaganda. In absence of those two things, society would become probably horrible or look no further than religious institutions across the world for examples of that. Perhaps your religion is a way of scaffolding ideas and values. If we will take away the scaffolding, people would replace it with other reasons, but would they use logic and scientific methods of seeking answers? That would always be bad ideas in the society. Religion does not engender civil behavior. Many of the worst abuse of power and worst violence through history happened in the name of a religion. But perhaps the tribalism would not go away anyway. Human brains have evolved in a way that makes religion possible. Perhaps in future terms, the most likely scenario is or will be that religion will become an anarchism, as remembered from humans' past history. But people may have new feats and inventions. Who knows? Maybe. Thank you for sharing this discussion with me. We will be meeting you here again by the next episode. Keep smiling and be happy. Again, thank you.